The U.S. is still grappling with how to process the tragic attack on the Capitol earlier this month. The FBI is continuing to investigate and arrest those involved in the deadly assault. But the question of who should be held responsible looms over Congress. It's one of the reasons President Biden focused his inauguration speech on unifying an increasingly divided country.
And here we stand, just days after a riotous mob thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people, to stop the work of our democracy, to drive us from this sacred ground. It did not happen. It will never happen. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Not ever. And so today, at this time, in this place, let's start afresh. All of us. Let's begin to listen to one another again. Hear one another. See one another. Show respect to one another. Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war.
Former Presidents Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama supported Mr. Biden's call for unity following the inauguration address.
I think if Americans would love their neighbor like they would like to be loved themselves, a lot of the division in our society would end.
That's what this means. It's a new beginning. And everybody needs to get off their high horse and reach out to their friends and neighbors and try to make it possible.
If, in fact, as George said, we're looking for what binds us together, the American people are strong, they're tough, they can get through hardship, and there's no problem they can't solve when we're working together.
Let's bring in Arthur Brooks now. Arthur is the author of the How to Build a Life column for The Atlantic. He's also a professor at Harvard University. Professor Brooks, welcome. It's great to have you with us. So we heard President Biden there call for unity several times during his speech on Wednesday. But, you know, that may be easier said than done for many who were listening and for many of us who've seen the kind of division that is really festering in this country right now. How do we overcome the political polarization that has occurred over these last 4 years when some of it is as extreme, as President Biden mentioned in his address, as, you know, white supremacy? You don't really find common ground with a white supremacist, you know, so how do we go about coming together at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big problem when basically both sides say, your rioters are thugs and criminals, and the rioters on my side are just misunderstood. And that's basically what's going on here. You know, whether you said in the last two segments, we saw pictures of the rioters on the U.S. Capitol, and we saw people who trashed Portland as recently as last night. I mean, the truth of the matter is that each of us has to speak up about excesses and abuses on our own side. 93% of Americans hate how divided we become as a country. I've got the data. And by the way, that's almost everybody watching us here right now. This is not a polarizing news network that's catering to just one side. People who are watching us right now, they want a better America. The problem is that the 7% that doesn't hate how divided we become as a country, that they're the ones who are controlling a lot of the media, controlling the political narrative. It's time for us to strike back. And the only way we can strike back as Americans is to strike back on our own side politically. If you see people with whom you more or less disagree and they're trashing your city, they're not misunderstood, they're doing something that's wrong and criminal, and you need to stand up to it.
Good point. So you're saying we need to stand up more often to the people on our own, you know, sort of political spectrum, even if they're far off where we would place ourselves. That's the side that we need to be more vocal about. That's what you're saying. Interesting.
That's
okay.
Right.
So, of course, the images we saw from the attack on the Capitol shocked the country, as I'm sure you're right. The images from Portland last night would as well. So, you know, how do we cope, sticking with the Capitol, though, for a second, because I think a lot of Americans were just so shocked by the symbolism of that, right? We're talking about the Capitol, the seat of our democracy. So how do we cope with those images? I mean, a lot of people are still going through some PTSD from that. as well as the growing threat. I bring it up again, but white supremacy was on full display there. I'm not saying, believe me, I'm not saying that all of those protesters there and all of those rioters there were white supremacists, but far from it. But there certainly were enough people in that crowd who were emboldened to show their thoughts on the matter. So how do we handle that?
Well, to begin with, there are radical elements in the United States, but that's nothing new. There has always been white supremacy and racism and radical activism that actually goes into violence. It's always existed. There's nothing new about that. The problem is that we have an environment right now where we have leaders who are kind of winking at it. That's what actually fires it up. The key thing for us to take away from this is that we're better than most countries. It's great to be American. I'm really happy to be here, and I know you are too. But we're not so special that these things can't happen in this country. Who's responsible for firing up that riot on the Capitol? The President of the United States was responsible for that because he emboldened it. He gave the action. He gave effectively the order to have that happen. Did he intend for it to happen just like that? Probably not, but that's not the point. So what we need to take away from this is that leadership matters. Aspirational leadership matters. For us to talk in a spirit of love for each other, it matters. That's what good leadership is all about. Let's learn something from the last 4 years. By the way, not just the last 4 years, all the way back to the financial crisis, this radicalism has been brewing. And let's learn from that. Let's learn from the terrible attack on the Capitol. Let's remember that not every single person in the United States has a good ideology. And let's move forward. Let's actually see this as a new day. I think this is a learning moment. And quite frankly, Tanya, I think this is a great opportunity. I'm more excited about the future than I've been in a long, long time.
Wow. And so you have some practical advice, right? What sort of practical steps would you suggest our viewers do to create a happier 2021, as we go into this new era? I think many of us, regardless of what side of the political spectrum you find yourself, are always looking forward to a new era, right? It's a chance to restock. It's a fresh breath. So what can our viewers do to go into this new year and create a happier environment for themselves?
Well, I'll give two suggestions going forward. Number one is, notwithstanding what we've seen on TV and all the bitterness we've had in the political debates, we should be, unless we're horribly ungrateful people, we should be very grateful to live in this great country. And so let's start with a little bit of gratitude. So here's the first thing I would suggest. Here's an exercise for all of our viewers. This weekend, let's say Sunday, take an hour and write down the 5 things you're most grateful for in your life. And then every night during the course of the week, take 5 minutes and study your list and think about and meditate on each one of the elements. Say a prayer if you're religious. The next Sunday, update it. Here's the data. I'm a social scientist. And so if you do this at the end of 10 weeks, you'll be 25% happier on average. And that's what we need. We need a country of grateful, happy people. The second is forgiveness. One of the things that we've found is that 1 in 6 Americans in the past 4 years has stopped talking to a family member or a close friend because of politics. 17% of Americans are completely estranged from a direct family member, a parent or a sibling or a child. Forgiveness is an opportunity. A new day is a new day. Think about somebody that you need to forgive, even if they don't deserve it, and forgive that person. It's like letting go of garbage. I guarantee you that if we practice gratitude and forgiveness in this new day, in this new year, notwithstanding your politics, we're going to feel better and we're going to be better, and this country's going to heal.
I like that. All right. Gratitude and forgiveness. That will be our mantra going forward. Arthur Brooks, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tanya.